Alright guys, today we're going to do lesson 7-10, and in this lesson we are going to be able to use your fraction tools to find equivalent fractions. You know, your fraction tools like fraction circles, fraction strips, and number lines. Now remember, we don't have all of the tools at home that we might have at school to be able to use, but we can always draw them out. And that's why I taught you how to draw them out, so that if you are ever somewhere where you don't have access to these tools, you can quickly create them on your own. All right, so before we get started, let's go ahead and get a piece of blank paper out, or your whiteboard, so that you can draw out some fractions. Okay, so if you need to pause this video and grab your materials, go ahead and do that. All right, so I want you to use your fraction circles to solve this problem. Lucas eats 5/6 of a round quesadilla, and Mara eats 7/8 of a round quesadilla. That is the same size. Okay, so their quesadillas started out the same size. They have the same hole. Who has the larger leftover piece of quesadilla? So it's wanting to know who has the larger leftover piece. Okay, so let's think about this. Before we even draw a fraction circle, I want you to think about what this could mean. So Lucas has 5/6. We'll say L for Lucas. That's what he ate. He ate 5/6. So how much did Lucas not eat? Well, if he ate 5 out of the 6 pieces, then his leftover piece is 1/6, right? And then Mara ate 7/8 of a piece. And so now if Mara ate 7 out of 8, how much does Mara have left over? Mara has 1 out of 8 that's left over. So who has the larger leftover piece? Okay. Now remember, the numerators are the same, right? And we know that when the numerators are the same, you look at the denominator. The bigger the denominator, the smaller the slice. So which of these fractions is actually smaller because it has a bigger denominator? And so this 1/8 is the smaller fraction, which means that 1/6 is the larger fraction. Okay, so if Lucas has 1/6 left over, who actually ate more? And so Mara actually ate more, didn't she? Because Lucas had the bigger leftover piece. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's draw that out as fraction circles so that we can see it. I want you to draw 2 fraction circles, starting them out about the same size, okay, to represent our quesadillas. And we're going to model 5/6 over here, and over here we're going to model 7/8. Now remember, when we are making 6, we talked about how to make 6, we're going to first start out with making thirds. So remember how we make our thirds? We put our dot in the center, and then we're going to put a line straight down, and then we're going to stretch out like we're stretching out our arms real nice and wide. Try to get those thirds as close to possible. And then you're going to take your thirds and divide them each in half to make your 6. So divide this one in half, this one in half, and this one in half, and now you have 6 that are pretty close. Okay? And then go ahead and shade in 5/6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Remember, if you need to pause the video so that you can get caught up, you can do that. All right, so now for Mara's quesadilla, what she ate 7/8. We're going to divide that into 8 pieces. Remember, always put your dot in the middle because you want every slice to be touching that dot. So we're going to first divide it in half, then in half again, and then we'll divide each of those halves in half, or each of those fourths in half, I'm sorry, so that you make your 8s. Remember, to make 8s, you first make halves, then you make fourths, and then you make your 8s. Okay? And we're going to shade in 7/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay? So to see which of these fractions is bigger, we can sometimes, to see which fraction is bigger, sometimes we might want to see which one has the bigger leftover piece. Okay, so this has the biggest leftover piece, so we know that's the smaller fraction. 7/8 is greater than 5/6, so 5/6 is less than 7/8. All right, so now let's use different fraction tools, fraction circles, number lines, fraction strips to make some equivalent fractions. Now guys, this is going to go back to, skip through a few pages here. This is going to go back to you being able to create tools yourself that are precise and accurate so that you can use them actually for tools, okay? So here's what we're going to do. We are going to model the fraction 2/3 on page, let's see here, what page is this? In your workbook, this is page 243. So go ahead and get page 243 out in your workbook. If you need to pause and give yourself time to get that ready. We are going to model the fraction 2/3. We're going to do it using number lines, and then we are going to do it using fraction strips, and then we're going to model it using fraction circle pieces. Okay? So let's go ahead and name a fraction that is equal to 2/3. So let's go ahead and build first 2/3. So here I have my number line. It's going from 0 to 1. I'm going to divide it into 3 equal pieces. So remember, with thirds, it's kind of a little bit tricky. You got to kind of eyeball it up, and sometimes you might need to erase your marks and kind of adjust them a little bit so that you can make it as equal as you possibly can. Okay. Now to model 2/3. 1, 2 out of 3 pieces. My 2/3 is right here. Okay, so now to find an equivalent fraction, let's make another fraction down below. What can we turn our thirds into? We talked about when we were making these fraction strips and making our number lines and our fraction circles, we talked about how we can make thirds into sixths, right? So if I go right down below, and I kind of follow this line below, and divide this line into thirds, now I can cut each of those thirds in half. And now, let's see what I've divided it into. So now this number line is divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this one's divided into 6. The fraction that would be equivalent to 2/3 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 is the same fraction as 2/3. Okay? All right, I'm going to kind of show you guys, I'm going to erase this for a second, and I'm going to show you how I can make even another equivalent fraction. Again, if I want to find a fraction equivalent to 2/3 though, I'm going to have to start out making thirds. So let me divide this number line into thirds. Now check it out. What if I divided each of those thirds differently? What if I divided each of the thirds into thirds? All right, now what is my number line divided into? My number line is now divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. My number line is now divided into ninths. This fraction right below 2/3 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ninths. 6 ninths would be equivalent to 2/3. So when you are making equivalent fractions using a number line, if you want a fraction equivalent to 2/3, build your second number line exactly like the one above. So build it to model 2/3, but then just divide each of those thirds differently. All right, so let's look how we can do that with our fraction strips. Same exact thing. We are going to take our fraction strips and we are going to divide them first into thirds so that I can model 2/3. Again, we talked about taking our strips, and you're just going to make a quick rectangle. Okay, so make a quick rectangle on your paper. Again, guys, if you need to pause the video to give yourself time to do that. So draw a rectangle and divide it into thirds as best you can. All right, now I am going to shade in, or I don't even need to shade it in, but here's 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. And if I'm talking about 2/3, let me use my highlighter to do that. I am talking about this much. Okay. Now, to use a fraction strip to find a fraction equivalent to 2/3, I first have to divide it the exact same way. Okay. And now, guys, let's go ahead and divide these thirds a different way. check it out. I could even divide it, watch this. You don't have to divide it this way, but I'm going to go ahead and divide each third. Did you see how many pieces I divided it into? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to divide each third into 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, divide it in half first, and then each of those in half. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so guys, how many pieces did I divide this fraction up into? If I divided this section into 4, this into 4, and this into 4, altogether I divided this fraction strip into 12ths. Okay, now I want to find a fraction that's equivalent to 2/3. So look how many 12ths that would be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 12ths equals 2/3. Okay. Now you could have divided those thirds just in halves. You could divide those thirds into thirds. The point is, build your 2/3 first, and then divide the thirds up equally. All right. Now for our fraction circles. Guys, remember the rules for fraction circles. I want everybody to draw 2 circles on their paper. Actually, you're on a workbook page, aren't you? So you actually have the workbook page in front of you. You don't have to draw those circles. All right, so divide a circle into thirds. Let's do it the way you were taught to do it so that they're as equal as possible. I'm going to do both of them into thirds. Okay, here I'm going to shade 2/3. Here, before I shade 2/3, I'm going to go ahead and divide this differently. So let's just go ahead and divide each third in half. Okay, I guess I could have gone ahead and shaded in 2/3. And then dividing each of those thirds in half. And so now, look how many pieces I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. This time I have 4 6 shaded in. 2/3 equals 4/6. All right, guys. So now you can go on to the next page in your workbook, page 244, and you can go ahead and just finish that on your own. All right, I'll see you in the next lesson.